Hey y'all, thanks for joining us for another episode of 911 Delta, Tethered for Life. This podcast may not be suitable to all listeners due to language and subject matters. Please listen with care. Hey y'all, welcome to another episode of 911 Delta, Tethered for Life. This week it's just your hosts, Anna
and Casey.
And we're recording a little bit early because Casey is going on vacation. So tell us about your week, Case. Where are you going?
Well, we're going to be heading to the Bahamas on a Carnival cruise for 7 days. So I'm super excited.
Nice. Are you ready?
80% ready right now.
Okay.
Yeah, almost finished packing. Mentally, I've been ready, but we haven't been on vacation since 2012, if that tells you anything.
Oh my gosh.
So it's been a long time, and first vacation without kids, so it's going to be cheaper and different.
Yeah. I want TikTok videos of you dancing on the pool deck, man.
Girl, don't tempt me because I will. I will in a minute.
Yes.
I'll have to record Lucas and his 2 left feet with his dancing. You'll get a kick out of that for sure.
Yes, indeed.
All right, so we're going to I'll recap a little bit of last week's episode. We had Brandon, who was firefighter medic. He talked a little bit about transitioning from working as a dispatcher to working back in the field as a career firefighter medic. We talked about the ups and downs and the do's and the don'ts. So we'd like to thank Brandon for taking the time out to come join us and thank him for his service. And we also touched a little bit on the stress as a dispatcher versus the field, working out in the field, which brings us to tonight's episode about stressors of being a dispatcher and ways we cope.
Yeah, because public safety, whether you're dispatcher, EMS, fire, law enforcement officer, they're all 24/7 positions, meaning that there's always someone there to answer that phone call or someone there to respond to every call for service. So all of these positions ride on a constant high level of adrenaline. We talked about that a little bit with M. I think that was episode 3.
Yes.
And it can really be a constant roller coaster of emotions too. So after the podcast with Emily, we asked how many of you are feeling burnt out and what size PSAPs do you work in? And 75% of the listeners are feeling burnt out. 66% work in a medium-sized PSAP. And I was wondering, do people think working in a smaller PSAP is more stressful or working in a bigger PSAP? Like, we'd have to have maybe Mikey back on to ask what he thinks.
Yeah, because would be a great one. He's worked in all 3 different types, right. Small, big, and medium. So that would be awesome.
Because a big one could be, high call volume, and that could be stressful. But then there's also a lot of people. So there may be more opportunities for downtime, taking a break.
Right.
Doing that. In a really small PSAP, you could be the only person. That would probably suck.
That would totally suck if you're doing 911 dispatching and everything in between.
So a medium size may be the most stressful environment because you're kind of doing everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. So as dispatchers, we have to wear many, many hats because every call, whether it's emergency or non-emergency, it's different. They're all different. Whether it's the same, you have a chest pain back to back, it's still going to be different. So we're call takers, we're dispatchers, we act as teachers, counselors. Some people think we're lawyers, which we are not. Um, we're the middleman, we're the bad guys, we're the heroes. I mean, it's just a ton of different things.
Yes, and it could be all of those things in like 30 minutes or less, right?
Hmm. Or even in
Depending.
the same call. You
That's
just,
true. Sometimes in the same call. Everybody talks about the critical incidents. I guess what people now kind of would call big T traumas, right?
hmm
Either high casualty or children involved. You're on the line with a caller for their last breath. I mean,
hmm
whatever, those are the kind of things that people consider, I think, like big T traumas. But then you could be dealing with just an irate caller who's calling you everything but a nice person for
hmm
helping them. And you could be dealing with, a death that's an expected death, maybe, but that's still traumatic for the person that's calling.
Yep.
And so there's a wide range of emotions to go through. And then, of course, you're trying not to take on your caller's emotions as you're going through and doing what you need to do.
Right.
And then, of course, you may be stressed out because you're working long hours and you have mandatory overtime and you're not getting a break and you just got to pee. And
Yeah. That doesn't always happen.
no, it doesn't always happen.
Um,
So it can be a really challenging job mentally. And I thought it was interesting the way that Brandon put it with, being in the field is different because you kind of deal with one call and then you, for the most part, get to go away, put that away, go do something, move around,
mhm.
do something different.
Yes, that was a good
Um,
way to put it.
right. And then when you're in dispatch, you don't always have that luxury. You could just be
Yeah.
12 hours of, back to back, whatever.
Yep. And that's about 95% of the time. That's what it is. I mean, you don't get a lunch break. You hardly get to get up to go to the bathroom. I mean, especially if there's emergencies and things going on, you can't just get up. So,
Yeah. And I think, I don't know about you. Everybody's different, but I'm not someone who holds on to calls, like especially maybe what people would consider big T type calls. Like I feel like that is what I'm there for,
mhm.
and to handle those real emergencies. And once they're done, they're done. I'm not really a person who worries about what the outcome is. Once somebody's in the ambulance or whatever, they're there. And I'm not
Yeah.
really worried about it after that, generally. But I learned this new term listening to, actually, it was a Tony Robbins podcast. Listening to that and talking about like emotional stacking, right? Like, and so that's what I will like, those irate people, those people who are just not nice, who are shitty
hmm
to us, to the law enforcement officers, complaining about fire rescue, whatever. Like those calls, man, I will stack those in my body and then I'm like really pissed off.
Yep. I'm the same way. Yes.
And I'm more pissed off when people are getting after the units on the street than me. Like if they're
Mm.
cussing at me, I usually just sort of let them roll with it until they're done and then okay, you know.
Then we have a
Um
oops.
oh, right. I mean, it's frustrating if you're actually trying to help them, like if they've got, an emergency that they need help with, you CPR or something like that, and you can't get them to be cooperative because they're just busy, screaming
Well,
at you.
yeah.
But if it's just somebody who's calling to scream about something, um, then that's fine. But yeah. So and it took me a long time. Like kind of realized that about myself in the last few years. And I know everybody's not the same. I know some people, those sort of big T type of calls do affect them, but
Mm-hmm.
I think most of our public safety centers or PSAPs, whatever you work for, they're so geared towards that critical incident stress management,
Mm-hmm.
which is like 2% of what you need.
Yeah, I agree with that. And yes, we all get into these fields, whether you're working out, on the trucks or ambulances, or if you're sitting in dispatch center. Yes, we all know that we took the job and yes, we're going to deal with this and that. But like we had said before, we are still human. We're not, a bunch of robots, even though it feels like that sometimes. But, we do have emotions. We do, I mean, we're normal people too, well, halfway damn normal for the most part. But I mean, and that's another thing too that we had talked about. You either get it or you don't as a dispatcher. Like there's no really in between, in my opinion. Like you're either going to be able to do it or you're just not. So,
Right. And that kills me. And I hear people say that about public safety and military people all the time. Well, they knew what they were getting into. And I'm like, no, nobody knew what they were getting into until like 6 months into it.
right.
Right. Like you have no idea when you start because nobody tells you,
Nope.
you know. It's kind of like having kids. Why don't people tell you this shit? I don't know, but they don't. People are human. Not only do we have to deal with the stress of everybody else, every 911 or even non-emergency caller, because
Hmm.
sometimes they're no fun either.
Ugh, definitely not.
But we also have regular stress like anybody else.
Hmm.
We still have to pay bills. We still have kids that get sick. We still have, you know, marriages. We still, the whole thing, relationships, whatever. We still have all of those things to deal
Yep.
with.
Yep. On top of everybody else's shit. But
Right. Right. And so, yeah. So, what do you think, Casey? What do you think your biggest stressor on the job was? Like, what would you say? Was it like, I know you worked some pretty traumatic calls with
Mhm.
officer involved incidents and things like that. Like, do you think those things stick with you more than
Um,
the irate people, or what do you think?
well, when I first started, I would say yes, that would, because you do become a family and close with these guys and gals out on the road and stuff. So when your family members being attacked or hurt or whatever, yeah, I mean that's super stressful. Um, I never really paid much attention to the people that were like really irate. However, as my later years towards the end, it was kind of like flip-flopped. Like I got to I don't know if it's just older age. I don't know. Like I said before, where I just don't give a fuck anymore. So it was kind of hard to hold back like running my mouth because I'm really quick to do that nowadays. So that became a little tricky, but I'd have to watch my tone and that kind of thing. So,
Right. I think I think yes, as we get older and we start to not give a fuck what people think, we do just have a lower tolerance, but I also think that's a factor of burnout
yep.
because it's the same thing like I know I told this story in the podcast with Emily about the other horseman's podcast that I listened to, and he talks about the 13 rabbits theory.
Hmm.
Like you fucking hit your 13 rabbits, and you're done. Like
Yeah.
sometimes that happens in the first 5 minutes.
Yep.
You're like, okay, I'm done with you people already. Um,
Yep.
so that's tricky. So how do you cope with that?
Well, when I first started, I eating was a huge thing for me. Like that was my number one way to cope. And then I just started shutting everything out, including family, whatever. I would literally stay in my room after I was off or on my days off, would just stay in my room. I didn't go anywhere. I didn't really come out of my room only to get something to eat or cook dinner or whatever. And I was right back in my room. Um, and that's, when you really start, well, you don't really know at that point until later on. And once I
Right.
knew that that was going on, I was like, oh shit, you need to do something. So I started crafting and became more motivated with the farm, like after we moved here, with the animals and stuff. And that has really been a lifesaver for me. And then, of course, I quit.
I mean, that's
And
one
now,
way to do it.
and now where I am now, I'm not, didn't steer too far out of the lane. I work
Right.
with a great group of folks now and absolutely love going to work. So, um, yeah, what about you?
Um, yeah, I mean, I would say that my go-to coping mechanism would be to isolate myself, and then also I get angry. Like it's an internal thing. Like I'm just like everything is too much trouble. Everything is a pain in the ass. Noticing it after probably after my second child was born and I went back to work and I started working more hours, and that was like 2020. So it was like COVID and all
Mm,
the policing protests and all of that. And I was just like, whoa, I have to take like 4 steps back from this, because when you're there and you're feeding off the energy of everyone else who's also pissed off,
yeah.
it was really hard. And that was when I think I really started looking into, psychology and mental health has always interested me. And then particularly after my first marriage, I got interested in it for military and public safety. And then I
Hmm.
really started looking into it for myself, like what is happening here. Then I learned the animals are great. One of the things that I think in animals, I think being out in nature is so helpful. For me, I've always ridden horses. I've ridden horses since I was 8 years old. I did not ride nearly as much as I'm used to after my kids were born. And when I started to ride more again, I realized how much of that helps me. Like that's something in that is like a somatic experience for me, and it helps me. Somatic exercising is becoming a thing, a popular thing for people to do. But riding, and I'm sure, if I don't know if there's any research on it, but I'm sure for some people that is a thing, because I know people who are like, I just feel better when I'm riding. Other people, it's like I can go out and hang with my horse, and or like you have the farm animals, and you can just
Yeah.
go hang out with them, and you feel better about yourself. And I didn't feel like that helped me as much as actually doing the
Physically.
physical act of riding my horses. And maybe that's because I've always been sort of movement oriented and I've always been
Yeah.
athletic. Um, so I would say maybe it's the movement more than actually riding the horse. So, um, I know that's one of the things I always tell you in like the dispatcher stress classes. Oh, get your exercise, and it's like, oh, fuck
Yeah,
that.
right.
Like,
That is
right.
right.
When I'm exhausted, I am not going to the gym. But
Yeah, no.
getting out and walking in nature, I think is very helpful. Even if you sit for half of your walk, at least you're
Yeah.
getting away from the technology and the phones and the
Yeah.
noise and the
Yep. I love
constant.
it. Living in the country is great.
What are some other ways you think about like coping while you're on the job, because I think that is really hard for dispatchers, like Brandon said, it's hard when you feel like you're stuck in that seat for 12 hours.
Hmm. I mean, the center had, we had discussed with M, I think it was with the episode with M, that they made this little room for us. But you really couldn't utilize it. I mean, maybe night shift folks could utilize it here and there, but day shift, there's absolutely no way that they would be able to do it. And then they've had those like bikes that they brought up, and that you could sit at your console and do
And the
that. Well, who the hell
treadmill.
can do that? Like, fuck no. I'm out of breath anyways. Like my big ass, I can't be doing that.
I
Like,
always thought
no.
I never used either of them, but I always thought I would probably kill myself, like trying to
Yes.
walk on that damn treadmill.
Right. And then they're not gonna give you no damn workman's comp. They'll be like, yeah, sorry, you gotta come in anyway. Like,
Right?
so yeah,
Yeah.
no. And I mean, folks read, but I mean, I'm not a reader.
I know when we work nights and we had like, everybody could have their workout time if they wanted it. I thought that was very helpful. I mean, of course, we had a gym in the building, so
Right.
easy to do. I do think that eating and drinking, like that's a
Yep.
stress reliever in itself for the body. Like that's another somatic processing thing that is,
Hmm.
and that's why people do it. But I think moving around would be so beneficial. It's just that it needs to be encouraged. Encouraged in the sense of like, go take a walk around the building and come back,
Yeah. Yeah.
or something like that. Because I do think that that is helpful just to get away for a couple minutes and come back to it.
Yeah.
And people need to have the confidence to set a boundary and be like, nope, I need to get up.
Yep. And not feel
You know,
guilty. Yeah.
there's certainly like little desktop exercises online and things like that that you could do. And then I think animals too, our office partners with a local place that trains service dogs for veterans.
Yes.
And so they come in and do some of their training sometimes in dispatch or around the office, which is awesome because they're dogs, so
Like,
that's great.
who
But
doesn't
I
like
think
dogs?
encouraging people to do stuff like that would be really helpful. And a lot of places don't have those opportunities. I also think that interacting, like Brandon talked about, interacting with the people in the field, the law enforcement officers, the
Hmm.
firefighters, the medics, whatever. Like, even it's great when they come up into dispatch because it breaks up the monotony of the whole situation.
Right.
But just to call on the phone and be like, hey, what's happening up there? I think things like that are helpful. Just that connection between people is helpful.
Do you remember the original D shift? You know,
Yes.
when we all worked together, we would
Yeah.
have the iBoo out.
Oh, yes. Ibu. Yeah.
Remember that? And we would dance and sing. That was a lot of fun.
Yes. That was fantastic. Yes.
But not, of course, every shift is like this.
Right. Right. Right.
So, but yeah, that was another good way to relieve stress for us
Yeah, it was. And again,
back
I
in the
feel
day.
like I feel like that's something that's hard to do on day shift,
Oh yeah,
even if it's not busy, especially during the week, because you never know who's going to come in there.
yeah,
Whereas like at night or on the weekend, nobody's coming in there. So,
yeah. So I mean, if the stress isn't controlled, and unfortunately it could, create the emotional distress, possible substance abuse, suicide. Unfortunately, that's become a huge thing for public safety folks, and it's really sad that they feel that's the only way out. And then, like we've already said, burnout.
burnout, and then that emotional distress then also turns into diseases. That's unfortunately what happens. And a lot of times I feel like people aren't correlating, those things. It's just like, well, this is happening to me now. And sometimes it's like, that's directly related to your mental health, like
Mm, right,
when your body starts to tell you those things, you need to go, oh, maybe it's not just a physical problem. Maybe
right.
there's something else going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to not think that it's, you know, something wrong with you or that people are going to think this way or that way. Like, who gives a fuck? Like,
Right. And I think really, you know, learning about this stuff on your own and learning about the physiological processes of stress and how it affects you, how it affects your body, how you personally react to it.
yeah,
Are you a person that is you get very involved in the emotions of the callers or the situation, or are you more a person like me who gets, more upset with the bullshit,
yeah,
you know? Um, so I think knowing those things about yourself and just acknowledging them and being like, oh, that's what's happening right now. And it's totally normal. There's a very good book. And I think I talked about this in the episode with Emily. There's a lot of information. It's very difficult. Um, but it's great to learn about the physiological processes. And it's called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. And basically, zebras, mammals, humans, like we're designed to have stressful events, right?
hmm,
And like really high, and then to come back to a state of normalcy or, stasis. But a lot of us are already working sort of in a high stress lifestyle anyway, and not getting enough sleep and not having enough downtime, not getting enough rest, and then we add the dispatching on top of it.
hmm,
And so our bodies are never really letting down, you know, and that's a huge problem. And I think we don't, I know that dispatcher education is not such that they address that. They don't tell you, they sometimes tell you, oh, like if you feel stressed or you think you're having some post-traumatic stress, you have nightmares or flashbacks or I don't know, some other bullshit, you want to drink a lot, then, maybe you should look at getting help or you should get some exercise. At that point, yeah, you do need help, but somebody could have helped you
way before.
way earlier in the process,
Yeah.
I
If you're
think,
an emotional type person where you think you're just going to not be able to shake all of these traumatic calls, I mean, then you probably really need to think again about your career choice because,
well, true. And I also think that, having someone that you can talk to, if it's not a spouse or a friend or, then a therapist or, somebody that you can tell all your bullshit to, and they can help you work through it. That's very, very helpful. Trying to go it alone, I'm not saying that it's not doable, but it's just harder.
yeah,
And you really need to educate yourself and do the research because your organization or, your jurisdiction is not going to do it for you. If you do feel like you need help and you do feel like your problems stem from stress, on the job stress, when you talk to your supervisors about that, you need to say, the stress from this job has caused XYZ. Don't say I'm getting divorced and I'm stressed out from my job, because human resources is going to say, well, the divorce is your primary stressor, not your job.
Right.
Right? You have to know how to talk about things when you want to go have those conversations. So being educated on the physiological processes of stress, what happens to your body, how you can handle it, and then being well versed in your counties or jurisdiction, whatever, whoever you work for, in their human resources, how that process works, really important, because they're not going to give you more than one chance.
Yeah,
right?
probably not. Yeah.
Right. So if you want to reach out to your job and say, hey, I'm having this problem, you need to do it the right way.
And I would love to hear what other centers do. So, I mean, if y'all are listening and your center does a specific thing, reference or any type classes that maybe is mandatory or that they give you, that would be pretty cool to hear what some folks offer to their dispatchers.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Like classes, any stress relief things that they do.
Yes,
You know,
I would like to hear.
the other thing that we used to do on our original shift was do out of work activities.
Yes.
And they weren't mandatory, but everybody who got along and, was whatever. And I mean, our shift was pretty lucky in that we did. And so we really enjoyed those. And I'm not saying that works for everybody, because
Right.
not everybody, sometimes you work with people who you wouldn't necessarily go out with. But
Right.
even we actually did movie night once with the patrol shift that we worked with. And that was super fun. So
Yeah,
again,
that's
that's
cool.
like reaching out to, the people in the field. I think those things are very, very key to keeping everybody connected, because people feel like, when you feel connected to a group like that and you feel like there's other people that are sharing the same issues.
Now, we're not saying to go out and be no damn holster sniffers and shit.
Oh, yeah,
I
no,
mean, because
no.
that's going to be creating more damn stress. No, don't be doing that.
Oh God. No, we're leaving that whole culture out of it.
Yeah,
We're not
yeah.
even, if that's the culture that you're into,
Don't do it.
you're probably in the wrong place.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Because yes, we've been doing this long enough that we are well aware of the public safety
Yes.
incest. I don't know what you want to call it, but
Oh God.
it's a hot mess. And that doesn't help. It doesn't, especially if people are involved in other relationships. It's not helpful. It's
Ugh.
not good for anybody. You're fucking up.
Yep.
Just say it. And
And everybody's gonna find out about it. So
oh yeah, everybody already knows. Like if you think about it,
right. So that's just more stress that you don't need on top of
right,
everything else. So
right. But the thing about it, and like physiologically, when you're in a new relationship like that, it causes or something that's a little bit secret or something like that, it causes a feeling that can mask the stress. And that is why it's a common thing that happens in people who are suffering from post-traumatic stress. So
that
that is a thing. It is a thing. So if you find yourself wanting to be in that category, go to the fucking gym. Okay.
right.
I'm kidding. Um,
Oh God.
um, eat some cake. Eat a sandwich. Like we used to always tell Daisy, eat a sandwich, girl.
Eat a sandwich, just not Chinese. Sorry, boob.
Oh, goodness. Goodness. Or a piece of ice cream. A pint.
A pint.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Um, well, I think we've covered quite a bit.
Yeah.
Hopefully
Yeah.
somebody can relate out there.
Hopefully they can, and reach out to us, guys, and let us know, because we really want to hear, like, what are your coping strategies? Is there anything cool that your center does for you, that you think other people should be aware of? Any programs out there that you think people should have that are super helpful? I think we should do a giant shout out to Boob, because she was the bringer of the iBoo, and
She was.
also the Daisy Dictionary, which was a stress reliever for everyone every night with
Yes.
her words,
Making her own shit
her
up.
pit of ice cream, and the
Yes.
Prius,
Yep.
and
That's
amongst other
Toyota
things.
Prius, but it was a Toyota Prius.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I need to drag that little book out. I still have it.
you should. We could do a whole episode
We so good.
on the Daisy Dictionary.
And make her be a guest.
Yes.
I don't really have any personal shout outs myself this time, but I'll shout out to all of our listeners. Thanks for listening again.
Yes, you're amazing.
And next week's episode, you think we should talk about some culture diversity?
Yes. And yes.
Yes.
Cultural diversity. I've taught that class before. Oh my God. Language barriers.
Oh, I got some things to chit chat about that. Hmm.
Yes. Yes.
Got
You'll,
lots of things.
yes. Casey is a fluent Spanish speaker, for those of you who don't know.
It gets my blood boiling just thinking about
We
it.
have more than once put her on the phone with somebody, and we'll hear her start speaking Spanish, and then the next thing it's like this hot tone in English, and you're like, uh-oh.
Yep.
Yeah, because she gets off the phone and she says, they spoke English. They were just trying to pretend like, they didn't.
Yeah, they can't fool me. I know what the fuck they up to. Uh-uh. Nope. It's not working.
Yes, and then when you get
So,
those languages that you don't know, and you're like,
uh, but everything is Spanish. They can speak
right?
Mandarin and it's fucking Spanish. Oh God.
Yep, yep.
Casey, can you take this call? Okay. And they're like, what? This is
Like,
not Spanish.
I don't know. And how like different languages sound, because I remember having a Mandarin speaker one time, and it was an accidental 911 dial. And when I got the interpreter on the line, it sounded to me like she reamed him a new asshole. Like, I felt so bad for him.
Oh
And I'm
God.
like, no, it's okay. I just need to verify this information.
Mm,
And yeah, so we can talk about that, the fun of
yeah,
like line and things like that.
that is going to be fun. So
Cool.
until I get back on land, guys, y'all be good. Thanks to all of our first responders out there. Keep it
Yes,
up.
indeed. Remember, like, share, follow, subscribe, whatever. Leave us a review.
Please. We're slacking, y'all. Come on.
I know. All right. I know it's Christmas time, but get on it,
Yeah.
people. Holiday time. I should say holiday time for our cultural diversity.
Yes.
Holiday time. Get on your reviews and liking and sharing. And we'll talk to you next time.
Until then, bye.
Bye.